Welcome back again to this week's parasha of Miketz for a Biselleh Torah, a little Torah. And we find this week that we are in the midst of one of the great epic stories of the book of Genesis, the story of Joseph. He is rotting in a pit. Not for the first time in his life. When he was 70 years old, the people whom he trusted most of all in the world sold him as a slave after putting him in a pit. And then, yet again, for the largesse of Joseph's life, he has known only cruelty. And yet Joseph is able to somehow manage what has happened to him with such equanimity that it goes beyond the parameters of what we might imagine an individual is capable of doing. Well, how would you feel if you were abandoned by your family, left perhaps to die, exchanged for a few shekels of silver as a slave? What happens when that trust is betrayed yet again when you're serving in the house of the master, and yet again thrown into a pit because of lies? So here Joseph, we find, is somehow able to manage to keep a hold of his character, his dignity, his nobility. And he comes before Pharaoh, and it says in the parsha, V'ritzuhu, and they rushed to bring him before Pharaoh. They cleaned him up, they gave him new clothes, so that he appear presentable before the king of the world. And Joseph does. And he does so with no strings holding him back to his past, but rather appears as he was, as he is, and ultimately as he will be. He maintains his selfhood. How would you feel if you were so wounded by life? This is an experience that none of us should ever have happen to us. Yet, for many, this is precisely what does occur. Parents abandon their children. Parents will abuse their children. Siblings will abuse their siblings. And sometimes the bad things that happen even by people who do not know us, and maybe especially by people who do not know us, to wit, the great anti-Semitism that has risen in the past 2 months, in the aftermath of October 7th, things happen that have no explanation. Bad things happen. There's another aspect, however, that the rabbis want to draw us close to make us understand the powerful inner meaning of Joseph's plight. Everything has an impact on heaven, inasmuch as everything that happens in heaven has an impact on us. What we do influences God, as you heard me correctly. God weeps when we do poorly. God laughs and celebrates when we do well. We have an influence on God, and God takes joy or wrings his celestial hands in pain because of the pain that we have done in our world. This is a story that is told in the Yerushalmi of a fellow by the name of Abba Yehuda, who one day was plowing in his field, not a very rich man at all, but quite poor, and one day his plow hit a rock, and the plow broke. And on top of that, the cow fell, the cow's leg broke, and his leg broke as well. He went to a doctor, and it was going to take a long time to heal. Here's a man who lived from hand to mouth, and he was able to take what happened to him with equanimity. And he went into the field later on to discover why his plow had broken it and why the tragedies and the aftermath of that had occurred, and he discovered someone had buried a treasure in his field. He was now a rich man. What's the meaning of the story? Not that good things will happen to us. That's not why the rabbis tell that tale. But the way that we interpret what happens to us is an indication of who we are. We can choose to become bitter because of the slights, because of the wounds, the scars that we bear that other people have done to us. Or we can choose a different path, a path of hope, a path of belief that we are worthwhile, that we in our lives have power and meaning that inhere in them. I think this is the real story and the real meaning of the story of Joseph. We have a choice of how we view what happens to us. Many of us, if not all of us, have bad things happen to us. But the way that we choose to write the script of our life, tell the story of our life, ultimately indicates who we are at our very essence, our core, our soul. Shabbat Shalom.